Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, International Medical Device Mergers and Acquisitions, a Regulatory Point of View. My name is Sarah Stec, and I'm the Legal and Regulatory Director here at GMAD North America, a subsidiary of L&E. As the different regulations and laws that affect medical device manufacturers change around the world, we've seen an uptick in mergers and acquisitions among medical device manufacturers. However, what is sometimes missing from the due diligence checklists are the regulatory and quality points that go into making a merger or acquisition actually work. Indeed, combining two different QMS systems is more difficult than it may seem at first, especially given that no two companies are completely alike. These considerations should be taken into account by both manufacturers when going through a merger or acquisition, as well as keeping the manufacturers and their products' compliance updated. This naturally involves communication with your notified body and passing along some of the information to your notified body in a timely manner in order to not have a break in your certification. As usual, at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes of questions and answers, so feel free to ask any questions in the box you see on your screen, either the Q&A box or the chat box. Also, if you have any technical issues, please let us know by typing it into the chat box and we'll try and solve it in the webinar. So now let's get started. Like I mentioned, my name is Sarah Stec, and I'm the Legal and Regulatory Director here at L&E GMAD North America. With me on this webinar is Monir El Azzouzi, Quality and Regulatory Compliance Manager at Johnson & Johnson. Monir will come into the webinar in a little bit in order to give his point of view from a manufacturer's point of view. Now today I'm going to talk about some of the points when planning a merger or acquisition from a notified body's point of view. And then I'm going to talk about what the notified body needs to know about the merger or acquisition that you're going through. Then Monir will jump in and talk about why compliance reviews are key to the merger or acquisition. And finally, he'll talk about D-squared ICT methodology regarding due diligence, integration of the two companies, and the crash test that you can conduct in order to make sure everything works as it should. So without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk about planning the merger or acquisition. The first thing to know regarding mergers and acquisitions from a regulatory or quality point of view is that these things take time. When I talk with M&A attorneys, they're always surprised at the intricacies involved in actually getting the merger or acquisition to work on a day-to-day basis, including getting the quality management system to work as it should. Whether you're combining two different QMSs, taking parts from each, or replacing one with another, the QMS will change. One of them is going to change. So it's important to incorporate QMS examinations and audits into the due diligence planning. What you don't want to happen is to get to the stage where you have to make it work and you don't know what you're getting into just yet. A key component of this is to plan how the change is going to come about. For example, if you're going to replace one QMS with another, how are you going to do it? Who needs to be notified? What procedures need to be updated? What facilities are you going to keep? All of this information you should have. In addition to the financial and legal due diligence, you should do some regulatory due diligence as well. Monir is going to go into a lot more detail with this in a little bit, but at a high level, you may want to start with ensuring that the notified body you will use after the merger or acquisition is still notified or notified to the product's directive or regulation. You would also want to check the product information, as this information would be key for the notified body to know with any new products. Finally, make sure to update any licenses for the software you use for the QMS and document control, and mock audits would help to see where your gaps are that need to be filled. Like I mentioned in my introduction, it's important to keep communicating with your notified body about your plans for both your company as well as your products. It's important because your notified or certification body is an important partner in the merger or acquisition process because they're the ones who will certify the final QMS and product line. Both parties want to make sure that their market access isn't interrupted, and so it's important to start talking to your notified body about your plans and timelines sooner rather than later. Make sure that it's not an afterthought. For example, if your new product line has never been sold in the EU before and they require a design dossier review, make sure to tell your notified body when you'd like to start selling them in order to keep the process going as smoothly as possible. First, in terms of preliminary information, the notified body should know that a merger or acquisition is actually taking place. Now, I know that there's confidentiality with regards to, notifying people that a merger or acquisition is taking place. But, do note that I don't say that a merger or acquisition has taken place, but is taking place. Now, your notified body doesn't have to be the first to know, but they definitely shouldn't be the last. What you want to avoid is your notified body coming in for an audit and arriving at a totally different company than what they've certified and what they visited the year before. This is the situation that can affect your certification. Also, make sure your notified body knows about your integration plan for the new QMS and any additional product lines. This will go a long way in keeping your certificates up to date and valid. In terms of the changes that the notified body needs to know about, first they need to know about any changes to the product line. Are there any products that are being added? Anything being discontinued? And specifically, these are for the products that they certify. So if you have Class 1 non-sterile, non-measuring devices, that you don't necessarily have to inform the notified body about. But for products that do fall under a notified body review, you do have to inform your notified body as to any changes to that product line that can affect your certification. They also need to know about changes to your QMS and your management structure. The medical devices directives require manufacturers to keep their notified bodies up to date with any major changes to their QMS. The notified body's auditors need to be updated with any new information that the company would have in order for the audit to be really successful, so keep this in mind. The notified body also needs to know about any changes to the legal manufacturer's name, even if there are no major changes to the QMS. This is because the legal manufacturer is the party with whom the notified body contracts and the party that the notified body certifies. The notified body needs to be able to contract with and certify an entity that actually exists. As a result, it needs to be told of changes to the name, even if it's just a simple name change with no other changes to the QMS or product line. Likewise, the notified body needs to know of any changes to the location. Some regulations state that a change of location is a major change to your QMS, which can prompt an additional audit. Now, nobody really likes additional audits, but the reason behind this is because the notified body or the certification body needs to be able to see that the QMS can function in the facility or at the place that it's located. And keep in mind that both the legal manufacturer's name and their address go on the front of the certificate, and so those need to be updated accordingly in order for the certificates to remain valid. The notified body also needs to know of any changes to the manufacturing process. For example, did the merger or acquisition add new production facilities to the QMS or a new manufacturing process? These would need to be covered at your audit in order to maintain certification, so it's important to keep your notified body informed about these so they can reserve sufficient time in the audit to cover these items. As labeling is an essential requirement, your notified body should be informed of any changes to the labeling, including how the company will be represented on the label. For example, will the brand name stay the same while the legal manufacturer changes? Or will everything be totally renamed and new labels printed? You should keep your notified body informed of movements for this. The notified body also needs to be informed of any changes to your EC representative. Your EC rep is part of your QMS, so the notified body would need to know about these changes anyway. As a corollary, don't forget the tasks and duties that your EC representative does on your behalf, and make sure to continue to manage those tasks and duties as the QMS and companies change. Finally, make sure to keep the records and certificates for your products up to date with any product name changes. If the brand name for your product changes and your notified body needs to update your certificates as a result, Make sure to notify them as soon as you are able so that they are able to make any updates they need to so that your products remain certified. And with that, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Monir. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Monir El Azzouzi and I'm Quality and Regulatory Compliance Manager within Johnson & Johnson. Today, I want to provide you some information on the importance of a compliance review during a merger and acquisition, specifically for medical device companies. Let's start with a short story. Once upon a time, Company A was having a good revenue and well-known portfolio. But after some years, the customers were looking for other products. The revenue of the company started to decrease, and they put in place a strategy to improve their situation. Product Yellow is the solution. They need to have this product on their portfolio. As the investment will be too high to produce it, Company A is looking to acquire a company that already has this product on their portfolio. Company B is the best candidate. They are producing medical device class 3 with CE mark and they have an ISO 13485 certificate. 85% of their production goes to export. Their revenue is about 10 to 12 million euro per year, and the price of the product is really cheap compared to the competition. For sure, this looks like a good deal. Now, if I tell you that product Yellow is a breast implant and that the name of the company B is PIP, would you still consider this acquisition? The company profile that was presented to you is similar to the PIP one, but this company was never acquired. Guess why? For those who are asking who is PIP, it is a medical device company that used non-compliant gel to fill their breast implants. Those implants were leaking after being implanted, which led to a scandal. The CEO is in prison and the company is closed now. So I want to ask you this question. When you are acquiring a company, are you really looking at the right aspects? For sure, we are looking at the financial and marketing aspects to be able to define if there will be a return on investment and if the products meet the customer requirements. Then we look at the manufacturing topics to define the cost of goods. Last, we consider quality and regulatory aspects, but as there is agencies like FDA, notified bodies or health authorities that are providing some authorization, we usually rely on them. If the product is on the market, we suppose that all the risks were evaluated by them. We will then focus on this, as if you acquire a company, I would advise that you rely only on you. To go through the process, I would like to present you a methodology called D2ICT or DICT. Double D is for due diligence. This phase will help you to know more about the targeted company and also to prepare the next phase. I for integration. This phase will help to assemble the two companies together. CT for crash test. This final phase is important to verify that your new structure is compliant. This will be focused on quality and regulatory aspects, but this can integrate other items if needed. What is a due diligence? Here is the long definition from Wikipedia. To summarize, this is an investigation that is done to evaluate a company that we potentially want to acquire. It's like when you are participating to auctions. Usually, there is some time dedicated for the buyers to look at the items before they can start to provide a price. To do this investigation, we usually have lawyers and financial people to review the intellectual properties and also the value of the company. There is also some business or marketing representatives who define if the products can easily be integrated on their portfolio and if this meets the customer needs. Sometimes there is a regulatory person or consultant, but it's not common to see a deep dive on this as we rely on the certificates. What is missing is a quality person to review the quality of the products and the shape of the quality system. And nowadays, a really important actor is also the IT person. This IT investigator should provide you information on the IT structure, which will help for the data transfer. First thing to do when you want to acquire a medical device company is to challenge the certificate. To do that, when you have the name of the notified body, you can go to the NANDO website. This is a database where all the notified bodies are registered. It provides you information on what they are qualified on, so if the notified body of the targeted company is not qualified to certify the products they manufacture, then you should put more investigation on this. When you will investigate the documentation of the company, you can notice that they use a local language like Chinese, but the notified body is from Spain. This aspect should then also be analyzed. Did they hire a Chinese speaking person? There is maybe a good reason for this, but better to ask. Now, if you arrive to a certified company but you discover that there is no procedure in place, no traceability for the products, no control documents on the workshop, then it's a huge alert for you. Also, something important. If you target to register the new products in an important country where it is actually not registered, verify that the certificates, the tests performed, clinical data are accepted by this country. This will help you to have a successful project. Something important to consider is that nothing is bad. Everything can be a reason to negotiate the value of the company. You should then think on the way to improve it. By looking at the packaging material, you can also have a lot of information, like for the CE mark logo. A product with a CE only is considered as a class 1 product. It's not sterile and do have no measuring function. Be careful because this product was not reviewed or certified by a notified body. It is self-certified by the company itself, so a deep dive on the dossier is recommended. A product with a CE and a number behind is a product which is a minimum class 1 sterile or with measuring function and maximum class 3. The number is providing you the information on who is the notified body. Each notified body do have their own ID number. You can also use this number on the NANDO database to know who is the notified body. The products bearing this logo are certified by a notified body, but, and this is important, maybe the notified body never looked at it. During an audit, the notified bodies are usually using a sampling method to review each class of products. They will quantify the number of products on each class and decide how many files they'll review. So better that you have a deep dive on these products too. As I've said, rely only on you. If you are having a tour of the plant, Jane Goodson defined a good methodology to evaluate the company. It's called Read a Plant Fast. On this table, you can see all the criteria that are reviewed, customer satisfaction or supply chain integration. This is not focused on quality, but all the possible aspects of a company. If you are well experienced with this methodology, you can within 30 minutes have a good idea of the force and weaknesses of the company. If you are doing the visit as part of a group of people, it can be even better, as you can ask each member to focus on one aspect of this list. Having a view of the manufacturing plant is critical, because if you are valuing the company or the product only on what is told to you, it will not work. One anecdote was that a plant manager was evaluating the capacity of production for a certain part by 20,000 per year, which was on the average on the market. But by going through this methodology, viewing how long it takes to manufacture a part, how much scrap they have, the bottleneck on the workshop, we could evaluate that they can produce only 15,000, which is below average. This helped a lot to negotiate or to decide not to go. You can find this article on the Harvard Business Review year 2002. The link is at the bottom of the slide. Quality, it's not only products, it's also data. Nowadays, we are using a lot of softwares to work. We can sign documents with a token key and store all our files on a server. Before that time, paper was our main safe support and also the only one considered as the original. And to transfer paper, it's easy. We just move the archive from one place to another. And we all know how to read, so no need to have a specific translator to understand it. Now, with all the different platforms and format of files, we need to evaluate if a transfer from one platform to another is feasible. If the software has been self-made by the company itself, then do we still have the right person to continue the maintenance of it? Or if this is a catalog software, how many licenses do we have and how much does this cost? There is also a risk if you are selling a part of your business. Imagine the entity you are selling owns the right for one important software used by all your organization. This can impact the continuity of your business, so before selling an entity, please evaluate this kind of risk. The review of the quality system is an important phase of the due diligence. The objective is to understand how each quality tools are used and if the way each problem or system is managed is done correctly. This could give you a good flavor of the maturity of the company. So I propose you to review some CAPAs to identify the type. Are they more curative or more corrective or even better, more preventive? A company that is using preventive actions should be considered as a good candidate. But if you discover that some CAPAs are recurrent, then the system is then maybe not perfect. Review some audit report. You will be able to understand if internal audits are really used to identify issues or only to comply on the requirements of ISO 13485. You'll also see what the notified body discovered and the actions that were defined to answer the observation. An audit of suppliers will also give you some details on the problems they have. One other thing that you can review are the complaints. This can provide you some hint on issues that are happening with the products. This will give you also opportunity to ask questions and not being surprised. If you discover, for example, 100 complaints on the same issue since 1 year, you should really challenge the actions that were performed. This can also hide a bigger problem. Quality system is a toolbox that should help you to arrive to an objective. Even if all the tools are in place on your toolbox, you should review how people are using them. Let's go through an example. This is the result of a due diligence I participated to. It was in an Eastern European country. The company is CE and ISO 13485 certified. As soon as you enter the company, it is exposed everywhere like a trophy. So we started to be confident on the conclusion of this due diligence. We wanted to review the documentation and a lot of them were written in their local language, which was a foreign language for us but also for the notified body auditor. The notified body was from Western Europe and apparently not talking the language from what told us the CEO of the company. So this was a bit suspicious, how an auditor can review documents if they are written in a foreign language. Then we visited the workshop. We looked at the drawings. There was no revision, even no tolerance, and the records of the manufactured parts were weak. The plant, there was no instruction and even nothing for the workers on how to assemble the parts and no way to trace the product. The product itself, when we looked at it more deeply, we discovered that there is no test of efficacy performed following the harmonized standards, and the electronic components used were non-RHS. This is a new regulation on substance used on electronic equipment. So our conclusion was not positive, but as I've said, nothing is bad. There was still a possibility to acquire this company at a really cheap price and put in place a program to improve it. But then we would not have integrated it right away. The second phase of the methodology is the integration. I want to use an image to show you what is it for me. During a Formula 1 race, if the car comes back to the pit stop and nobody is in place to change the tires or to refill the gas, there is no chance for the team to win. The engineers should be ready and should know exactly what to do before the car arrives. For a merger and acquisition, it's similar. If when we arrive to the phase of integration, no one knows exactly what we need to integrate, what is the strategy, what are the critical points, there will be for sure no success. And in a world like ours with a lot of competition, this integration phase is key to be able to have a good return on investment and to not spend a lot of time on it. The integration should be considered as a real project. We need to identify a good project leader that already knows all about the company we want to integrate. And to help him, we need to have a dedicated team. The team should receive clear objectives from the management, not just, okay, your turn now to integrate everything. It is critical to communicate the situation of the project and to report some risks to your management so they can evaluate if there is a need for more resources. There should be also a budget allocated to this project because there will be a lot of changes to manage. Data transfer, product re-registration in different countries, labeling update if you change the name, the address, the transfer of notified bodies, and also you should allocate some money if there is some issues identified during the due diligence that should be solved. Data governance will be also key. You need to define the strategy for the future structure and also for the quality system itself. You need to define what you want. For the quality system, there could be three main strategies. Each entity is kept with no change. So you'll have to manage two quality systems, two management reviews, two CAPA procedures, two notified bodies audit. A global quality system certified by one notified body. A global quality system used by local entities with local procedures and certified by different notified bodies. This strategy should start to be defined during the due diligence. You'll have more information on the structure of the entity so you'll know what is feasible or not. The last phase is the crash test. This step is really important to test your system before you submit that to a third-party audit. First, you should put in place an audit readiness plan. You need to have a checklist of all the things that should be ready before the audit, like the job description and training of each employee. You also need to identify who are the subject matter experts for supplier quality or procurement or lab tests, for example. You also need to check that everyone do have access to the platform, like those where you should find the procedures. When it comes to the group, you should verify that you have all the management review available, signed, and the status of the actions ready. That all the actions related to CAPA audit complaints are clear and on track, and you know who are the leaders of each. For all what is outside of your entity, you should prepare a list of, for example, where are distributed the products, if there is an agreement in place with the transportation company, if all the agreements that are with external manufacturers are still valid. The audit readiness activity should start 3 to 4 months before the audit. When it comes to the auditor, you need to train your team on what not to say and how to behave. Some SME that will be interviewed by the auditor will maybe not understand the objective of this audit and will push the problem on the quality by saying, that's not my problem, that's a quality assurance problem. Or some of them will maybe think that there is some off the record thing during an audit. You should train your team to stick to the question and also not to start talking during silence. It's important when you acquire a new entity to train the new teams on those rules as they are maybe not used to be in front of an auditor. To train your team, you can plan some mock audits, hire a consultant, or if you are in a big group, ask one of your internal auditors to perform a mock audit within this entity. The team should behave like if this is a real audit, so everything should be on the same configuration. The auditor should keep his comments for the end. He needs to stress you and show you how a real audit can look like. Usually, there is always the same pattern during an audit. The first, the auditor wants to see the procedure, then he asks you questions on it to verify your knowledge, and then he wants to see some evidence. Here are some scenarios. Do you have a procedure for ordering your products? Yes, we have. Where is it located? It's located in our platform. Can you open your access and find me this procedure, please? Yes, sure. Or another one. Do you have a procedure for reviewing your product design? Yes, we have. What are the different steps you have to follow? We have step 1, we have step 2, we have step 3. Can you show me the evidence that this is done for product Z? Okay, will do. So you see, we can have some scenarios. You can train your team by looking at all the aspects of the ISO or the CE mark and ask questions to your team to see if they can answer the question. To conclude on the 3 phases, for the due diligence, you should not focus only on financial and marketing aspects. Quality, regulatory, and IT are also topics that can kill your business, and this costs a lot of money. IT is key nowadays, so investigate on the platform used by the company you are targeting, as the value of this company is on those data. The integration phase should already have started during the due diligence. If you estimate that this company can be acquired, you should have all the data and plan in place to start the integration right away. As two companies can be really different, you need to define the data structure to avoid misunderstanding. This will avoid you to lose some data and also some time. And last but not least, you need to test your organization similarly as we test a new car when we put it on the market. You should perform a crash test. This will help you to verify that your structure is compliant and that your team can answer an auditor. A last quote from Warren Buffett before to finish. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. Thank you.
And that just about wraps up our webinar. Thank you very much for listening. Like I said, we'll stick around for another 10 minutes or so to answer any questions. If you have an urgent question or one that you don't want to pose publicly, please give us a call or email us to let us know. Thanks again for coming.